Hi, everybody. Yes, as Mark said, I'm not sure if my lapel mic is on or am I on this one. Damien Nolan, yeah, I'm a director at, it's optional, ERQ, RQ. You can choose to pronounce the E or not, depending on what takes your fancy. So, yeah, I've a presentation this morning looking at how consumer web experiences could potentially, and in my opinion should, influence on what we're proposing to candidates and job seekers as an online experience as part of their application and engagement with you or us as employers. And what I mean by consumer brand experiences, if you just think of buying online with Amazon, booking a hotel with Booking.com, booking a flight, or maybe with reference to some of our other speakers today, booking a train ticket online with maybe Great Western, or in-game purchasing if you're a Candy Crush addict. So that kind of experience, and how that could and should kind of set the barrier or set the target really in terms of what we can offer to candidates engaging with us from a recruitment perspective. So that's kind of our show-off slide. We work with all of these companies, which is great. So in terms of the items that I'll talk you through, flatter to deceive. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it's all about the fact that a lot of us are, a lot of you, in fact, are spending a lot of money, and a lot of talent and creative energy is going into building your employer brand and attracting candidates to your organization. Which often is some tremendous work. The Google definition of flatter to deceive is appear promising but ultimately disappoint. So what I mean by that is using your creative talents either internally or externally with your creative agencies to build fantastic employer brands, making people aware of your organization and your opportunities. But then when those people or those candidates come to navigate on your website and come to apply for opportunities, there's often a kind of a breakdown, and that can manifest itself in several different ways. I'm just going to talk you through some that we've noticed and that we as a provider aim to kind of fix. So the first one obviously is to have candidates switched over to somebody else's technology, pop-up window with maybe your ATS provider's name in the URL, and candidates are thinking, what's going on, where's my data going, who am I engaging with? And pop-ups increasingly being blocked by ad blockers, and it's just creating friction that as an employer you just could do without. So that's one of the key things that we as a provider would look to eliminate, and obviously build a strongly integrated experience for candidates with your existing web presence, and make that a kind of a coherent and joined up experience. The second one, again, this overlaps to a certain extent with a lot of what Richard explained earlier. So it's, if your website or your careers part of your website is not responsive or not even accessible from a mobile, that's kind of, the equivalent of turning away. If you were, in retail, it's the equivalent of not allowing half of your customers into your shop. How do you explain that one away? So again, Richard mentioned a lot of statistics about the analysis that they've done at Capita, and there are lots of statistics out there. Is it 50%? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? Doesn't really matter, to be honest. The reality is it's a number that's not going to decrease. If anything, it's going to increase. So visitors to your careers portal invariably in the future will be or will expect to be able to access it from mobile devices. To make that a little bit more real, we've had a look at some of our customer sites. So again, these are all built in responsive design and designed to be mobile friendly. So we just, we've got EE with 50% of visitors to the career portal are doing so from mobile devices. Avis Budget Group is 43, First Group, and this includes Europe, but equally in the States, 58%, BP Retail 52%, Fuller's 47%, British Airways 50%. So again, you wouldn't, as a retailer, we wouldn't expect to turn half of our customers away at the door. So equally as employers, we really should be looking at having a warm reception on mobile devices for candidates coming to our careers portals. It's also important to allow yourselves to reach new candidates and new types of candidates. The days when ATS solutions were aimed at graduates or accountants in professional services firms, that's no longer the case. An ATS or something to manage your recruitment process is pretty much a must-have for every organization beyond a minimum size, I would say. So if you're in retail, construction, nursing, engineering, people are not necessarily sat behind their desks waiting for job alerts by email to kind of, come into their PC. So opening up mobile access is increasing your talent pool to a certain extent and giving yourself access to all of these candidates who are not necessarily sat at a desk, but invariably will have a smartphone or a tablet device to use in engaging with you. It's also about opening up new times of the day. So again, some research is showing, if your career opportunities and access to those career opportunities are only from desktop devices, that's kind of part of the equation, but it's only a part of it, obviously. You're kind of restricting yourself to kind of 9 to 5 working hours. But obviously, mobile phones, smartphones, tablets are very popular in the morning, over breakfast, during commute time, and you kind of have an increase in the use of those devices right through the day, and tablets being particularly present in the evening, and I'm sure we can all recognize ourselves in these kind of statistics. So it's all about opening up the hours of the day during which you could potentially have an engagement or an exchange with candidates that have, taken an interest in your company and are exploring opportunities and potentially applying online. Again, follow on to some of the research that Richard shared with us is the fact that you may have a mobile enabled career site and allow candidates to actually browse for opportunities. But then the next step, obviously, is for the candidate to register and apply. And they don't necessarily go hand in hand. So the key thing, again, is to avoid difficult registration processes. If possible, avoid the need for candidates to create a new login and password that they have to remember. And obviously, more importantly, again, filling in lengthy forms, which are difficult with big stubby fingers on a smartphone, and possibly needing to then go back to a desktop device to upload a CV. So again, what we're talking about is making that all accessible from mobile devices, and what we increasingly are finding. Just want to jump across here to an example that we've, one of our examples on this is from the White Company. So it's just here showing the ability, and this comes part of our kind of standard package, is the ability for candidates to register using their existing social profiles. So it's all about not needing to remember a new login and password, and just choosing to use your Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, registration details. Obviously, it will link back to LinkedIn or Facebook and ask for your permission to do that just once, but once you've given that permission, the data will be transferred across and you will be automatically registered using that profile. And the second part of that, obviously, is the ability, if you do apply via LinkedIn as a candidate, you can have your LinkedIn work history pulled through as part of your application form. So again, it's all about simplifying that process. And again, the increasingly linked, I think we'd all agree, for a lot of profiles, your LinkedIn online profile is essentially the new CV. So that's getting the most up-to-date information that the candidate has through to your ATS and making that available for candidates, or sorry, for recruiters to review. So that's one aspect. Again, if we look at Amazon online consumer experiences, people are collecting data. They know kind of what your preferences are. They can propose new products and services to you based on what you've done previously. All of this kind of thing, which obviously is based on, in a lot of cases, collecting big data and analyzing that data. I would say to a certain extent, from our perspective, I'd almost take the word big out of it. It's big is kind of superfluous. It's just about data, and a technology platform worth its salt should be providing you with that data, and you should have that data at your fingertips. So I've just taken some examples here from one of our non-for-profit customers, Macmillan Cancer Support. Andrew Hyland has taken part in a few presentations where he's presented this kind of data, and basically Andrew was faced with needing to increase his the volume of recruitment that he was managing, but with less spend. So it was doing more with less, and also looking to engage with hiring managers who were typically out in the field and, again, not necessarily sat there waiting for recruitment data to come through to them. So, again, using the data that the ATS or ATS solution can provide him with, he's able to identify lots of different metrics. So just to give you an example of that, source of hire by grade and area. So just understanding where successful candidates for particular roles within particular parts of the business, where they're actually coming from, and obviously being able to adjust his advertising and resourcing strategy based on that. Very similarly, in terms of advertising and recruitment channels, actually being able to identify where candidates are coming from, and obviously your recruitment partners, whether they be job boards, job board aggregators, agencies and so on, will typically be able to tell you how many candidates they've put through to you for particular roles, but typically that's all they can tell you. They can't tell you what became of those candidates further down the line. But again, with a properly structured ATS solution, you can actually identify which candidates have made it through to interview, hire, offer, how many of those candidates have accepted offer. So you've suddenly, the shift of power is towards you. So you've got all of the data, which then allows you to, have meaningful conversations with your third-party providers in terms of, and that obviously is very powerful in terms of negotiating deals and actually having the data to maybe counter some of the claims that your recruitment partners may be making. And it just leads to a much more intelligent conversation based on facts as opposed to, marketing or whatever. So that again is data that you should have at your fingertips. Fairly similarly, using data from the solution, you can identify geographically where candidates are applying from. And again, this is real data from Macmillan. And, again, in terms of trying to figure out what's actually going on and adjusting your sourcing and advertising strategy as a result of that is clearly going to be beneficial in terms of getting a better return on your advertising budget. Something else which wouldn't necessarily have been top of my list of things to watch out for, but it's very interesting to look at what Andrew has been able to determine here. In other words, if you look at December, a very low percentage of candidates applying in December for various reasons, and then suddenly a peak in January. So I'm not sure how many of us would know that kind of dynamic from our own businesses. And obviously that kind of can translate into, well, there's probably not much point in spending that extra few £100 or whatever it might be in December when I know it's probably going to be less effective than if I wait for January, for example. And they've also increased their presence on social media, and again the analysis, real-time analysis of identifying which channels are being most appropriate for particular roles is giving them tremendous insight into where to focus their attention and their budgets, and get the best return on that investment. And I guess the final part of that was also about the fact that our solution is, I'm trying to do this without selling to you, but it's difficult. But a decent ATS solution, a contemporary solution of our days, should be responsive design both for your candidate population, but equally for your line manager population, so that increases in productivity in giving people access to data. In a similar fashion to what we saw for candidates at different points of the day, but equally in terms of industry and sector, your line managers may not be sat at a desk again. You could be, in retail, in engineering, in construction, a lot of people out in the field, on the move, and giving them access to admin and recruitment feedback and their feedback in terms of shortlisting candidates and so on via mobile devices, again, is an opportunity that, modern solutions will provide you with. So I've just got two screenshots of our solution, and hopefully if you get a chance you can come and visit us on our stand, just to show some of the benefits of that. So we've got, you can't really see it with the screen definition here, but on the left hand side we've got quality control of bottlenecks. So it's a visual indicator of candidates that have been stuck at a particular status in the system for more than we have defined as being reasonable. So we've got short manager review on the left-hand side with candidates kind of in a red status, so they've been more than 10 days, and a kind of a snapshot of what that looks like from a manager review perspective. So a manager can access that data from a smartphone or a tablet device, and we provide a Tinder-inspired shortlisting mechanism, which allows the recruiter just to scroll through that candidate profile, and then at the bottom of the screen you can see hopefully either a swipe right to move the candidate through for interview, or a swipe left to have a negative response. And you can configure that to either communicate directly with the candidate or move it into a holding zone, which is then managed by recruiters to ultimately communicate with the candidate. So again, it's all about streamlining the process and ensuring that the appropriate people or the relevant people in your process are getting the relevant data at the relevant time and on the relevant device. So opening up the opportunities there. So just in passing, we have, just before I started, hopefully these little sheets were given out. So you've got two opportunities in there. One is just a little game, a little quiz. So if you can spot the four features or 4 elements of our solution that are untrue, or the things that we don't do. And just fill in your details, pop it back to our stand, and we've got a couple of bottles of champagne to give away a little bit later on. And we've also got an iPad over there with a real-life example of that manager shortlisting with the swipe interface, so you've got a double your chances of winning if you want to take part in that. So again, it's all about reducing friction, increasing your kind of throughput, and making that data available in the appropriate places and at the appropriate times. And I'll just finish off. I can see I've just run over my 15 minutes, so I'll try and tidy up. The whole experience, really, just to give an illustration of how the whole end-to-end process can be managed from mobile devices. So a customer like BP Retail have really pushed the boats out and have put the whole process online. And that goes from initial attraction, that includes combining online with offline advertising. So we support specific QR or flash codes that are integrated with posters, for example, that are literally displayed in service stations. So candidates can literally using their mobile phone, flash the QR code and get direct access to jobs that are local to them, and immediately, engage with BP as an employer. We have online SJTs that are directly accessible and compatible with their mobile phone. And we've even gone as far as allowing them to produce online offers and online offer acceptance with e-signatures for candidates to accept those offers online. And that part of the process alone has resulted in cost savings just on postal costs, without taking into account a candidate experience or reduced time in processing those applications. Just on postal costs alone, they've saved £250,000 annually just by putting that whole process online. And again, not every piece of functionality and every option that we offer is directly applicable to every organization, but hopefully that will give you a feel for the kind of process that you could potentially put in place. And again, as I said, starting off, it's all about taking inspiration from what we as consumers would expect. When you're on Amazon or you're on Booking.com, it's kind of branded, it's joined up, you can track what's going on, and if you don't get those feedback almost immediately, you're kind of concerned that something is not quite right. And I think as recruiters and as in-house recruiters, it's reasonable for us to propose that to candidates that are engaging with us as a company, so that as I said, the kind of consumer experience is reflected in the employment and candidate experience. So I'll just run over ever so slightly, but hopefully that's not too bad. And as I said, please feel free to come and see us on the stand and take part in the competition if you want to get yourself some nice champagne. Thank you very much.